In the last session, we started with the different operations on the processes. So first operation on the process was its creation and the termination. As a detailed explanation, I took one step extra called execution. Okay. So with respect to process creation, it is called as successfully creation of a process. Okay. So generally what happens, there will be one default main program called as init. Okay, so that acts as parent of all the processes, and any process further created is called as a child process. Okay, like that every process will have its own individual identification number, which is a unique. The similarity is USN of a student. Okay, so this is a routine parent program or a process. So as activity starts get successfully created, it leads into the new child process or new process in this tree. Those becomes child of already created process. Okay, so here these all are the child process. So these are parent as well as child. Parent for the PS, whereas child of login process. Okay, so like this we have the tree in which we will have the different processes created at different scenario. And one important observation, in all these processes there are no two process with the same process ID. Every process will be different from each other. Okay, so I also explained if a parent process calls fork function, automatically it is understood that child is created. So unless child completes its execution and finishes, parent has to wait. Okay, so once child finishes and exit, then parent can continue its work. Okay, so one of the C program I took help to explain it. So there will be a standard inbuilt function system called fork, which results into a positive number called as PID. If PID is negative, so we have to understand that so fork execution got failed, so process creation not success. So else part process creation is success. If process creation is success, who has called it becomes a parent, who has been just now created it becomes child. Okay, so now the condition for process termination, how the process will terminate. Generally process uses a standard function called as exit. Okay, exit means stop of the execution. If exit is called by a process will stop. So another way of process termination or another way of process termination, it keeps a lot of time for waiting. Okay, if lot of time is for waiting, what is the problem with that wait is its waiting time, say assumption 1 minute or 2 minutes. If it kept in the waiting state for hours together, so it's a total tenure will finishes. So the longest wait results into the total tenure expiry. So that also a kind of process termination. And one more type of process termination is abort. Abort means without finishing its work, completing the or terminating a process. Always you see exit means successful completion, abort means without doing activity completion, whereas waiting means it is interested to do the work because of some resource not available, or in the given stipulated time it is unable to finish its execution, it will go for the termination. These are the three possible types of terminations. Okay, so next comes how to control a process termination, and what are the different situations we have to observe when we are terminating a process. When we are terminating any process, make sure whether it's children, all children are completed or not. If completed, no problem of terminating a process. Let's go for the situation in the tree. See here, there is one process called bash, whose parent is login, whose child is PS. So if at certain moment I want to terminate, means stop, means close this bash, then I should check whether PS is completed or not. If completed, no need of waiting. Also it has to check because it has one more child, that is one more PID with the 9204. So when I wanted to finish a process or terminate a process called a bash, whose number is 8416 in the tree, it should wait till ps and one more command will, or one more process will finishes. If not, okay, there are two options. First option, is it compulsory for bash itself to terminate? If yes, okay, then it has to attach this link ps to his parent called login, and this PID 9204 again making it a parent, so that bash can terminate. If not, if ps and the one more process is not yet completed and bash can wait for some time, then bash will be waiting till its child will finishes. Once the child finishes, child terminate themselves, or child will terminate, then bash can terminate on its own. Okay, so coming back to this explanation. Okay, so if a process wanted to terminate, it has to check whether all children and all its grandchildren etc. are terminated or not. If not, try to wait. Okay, if termination is a important priority, then recreate a link of child to its parent. So grandparent and child process will get a direct connection. So what happens if a parent terminated without wait, a parent terminated without a wait, the child process will become orphan. Very simple. In this here ps is there, ps process is one, and whose parent its parent is bash. So bash will never worry about ps, it terminates itself. So that time ps becomes orphan. ps becomes orphan. So not to provide not to maintain an orphan state, this init or OS will make creation like this. Okay, see, this is how the connection will take place. Sorry. Okay, so there is one more definition, zombie process. If a process's parent, any parent, either direct parent or a grandparent, are not at all waiting, then it is called as a zombie process. See, simple way, ps is under execution, its parent bash will not wait, terminate itself. Its grandparent login, that is also not wait till the ps completes. So bash completed, login also completed, init cannot complete, that is for sure. Okay, if these two are completed without waiting for ps completion, then ps becomes zombie. Okay, so these are the two definitions. Next, how a multiprocessor architecture you can see in the Chrome. See, if you open up a Google Chrome, so you can see 3 to 4 you can open a 3 to 4 tabs at a time. One for video result, one more for some song, third is for some file download, etc, etc, some social media activity. See, these all things at a time, if you start using, it is called as a multiprocess. Each activity, whatever you do, is called as one process. So if we open up multiple tabs in our Google Chrome, it is called as multiprocess architecture. So here, how the multiprocess architecture will do is, it based upon browser and renderer. Okay, so browser means which provides user interface. Okay, so through Google Chrome we will provide the we will request for the service, whereas renderers means like web pages which runs on browser, so I can see the data. See, very simple way, I wanted to see cricket live score. Okay, live score. So what I do, I will go open up a Google Chrome, I will click live cricket score. So what happens, I will see some pictures, visuals, who is the batting currently, who is the bowling, and who has done more runs, short runs, etc, etc. Some information will be there. That is represented on my computer, but exactly same type of data is not going to be there in our server who is providing me the service. Okay, so what he will do, he will store the data in other format, but what happens in my computer, it looks very different. Okay, so this method of converting actual stored data format into other best way is called as a render. Okay, so this is what a small definition of multiprocess architecture. So now comes, okay, if there are one or two processes like in this tree, if PS wants to send something to his neighbor or another process, okay, somewhere here PS to this what you can say here SSHD. See here PS your number is 9298, SSHD is 3610. So now it want to send some information to this, here you can see. Okay, now what is the option? The process, that activity is called as inter-process communication. If one process of a system, when it want to share something with another process or transfer something to another process, there should be inter-process communication. If there is an inter-process communication, what is the important thing is, okay, say a very simple example, there are two students. Student 1 took 3 subjects textbook from the library, another student took a 3 subject textbook from the library. Okay, so what if they both are very good friends, what they can do is they can exchange whichever they have completed the preparation or study. So indirectly they can easily read 6 subjects textbook, they can easily access because both are good friends. If both will never communicate with each other, what is the situation then? He doesn't know which 3 books the first friend 1 took, and second person doesn't know about him. So they both will not communicate with each other. So maybe they will end up with situation that they will end up only with the 3 textbook. So if they communicate with each other, what they can do, whichever subject the person 1 finishes study, he can give it to second person, vice versa. So at a time they feel like they have 6 textbooks. Okay, that's the way. Whenever resources are shared, it is mandatory to have good communication between any 2, 3 or multiple number of processes. Okay, why it is important to have this communication is because always nowadays nobody wanted to use a Google Chrome browser with only one tab. Generally what we will do, we will open multiple tabs. As we open a multiple tabs, there are definitely multiple processes. If there are multiple processes, definitely we should maintain a good communication between each of them. If we maintain a good communication between each of them, we can expect sharing of resources properly. Okay, next what happens? Okay, so why it is important to have cooperating a process? First thing, information sharing. Second thing, computation speed up. Okay, see now what happens, I will search for live cricket score. In another window I will search for some IEEE paper. Okay, cricket score will be very fast because it's a most referred search word, whereas some IEEE paper will take a little more time. Then what happens, the time how fast I got live cricket score, the remaining time I can use it for searching for a IEEE paper, which may take little more time. Okay, that means we can enhance the speed up. If one process will take less time, the whatever the time allocated for it, say for example for both searches I have allocated 2 seconds each. First search 2 seconds, second search also 2 seconds. What happens is live cricket score I got within half second. So what is time remaining there? Allocated is 2 seconds, and how much search engine took is half second. So 1.5 seconds are remaining. That I can give it for the time for searching the IEEE paper. So like that we can have speed up, we can expand go with the speed up. Modularity means each process works on module basis. Okay, so module for visualization, module for data store, module for data fetch, etc. So since they work module, each module will do its own specific work. If one module doesn't communicate with other module, so there will not be efficiency in the system or software. So we should have best communication among processes as well as modules. Okay, convenience. Why it is a convenient method is, as I said, if one process takes less time than the allocated time, the remaining time whatever is left without used, that we can give it for others. So that is what a type of convenience we have. Okay, now what is a technical word we should give for communication between 2 or multiple processes is inter-process communication. Okay, there are 2 modules, one is for shared memory, another is message passing. Okay, so let's see what both are. Now you see communication models. First is message passing and second one is shared memory. Here you see there are two processes. Please see this first diagram and second diagram, both are separate. Okay, so first message passing, there are two processes, process A and process B. So what process A will do is, here you see, I am going to use some specific type of message queue. Say for example M3, this message queue is used by process A. So process B, what it will do, it for a stipulated time it will try not to use M3 because others are free. M3 is presently busy with process A. So process B, what it will do is, it will try to wait for M3 to become free. Okay, initially only it will not fight to get M3 because process A already reserved for it. Okay, so it will wait for some time, some more time it will wait. If not getting finally, then it may try to get the data from message Q3. Okay, so what happened in shared memory here? See this shared memory is a common here. Here there is nothing called A separate and B separate. There is no waiting state. As soon as A feels some data is required from the shared memory, it will take it. As soon as B feels it need a data, so suddenly it will go and collect it from the shared memory. Shared memory best example is library. Okay, library. What happens? You feel to get one textbook, you will directly go to library and get that textbook. Same way another person will also do. Whereas in the queue means it's like a personal library, small personal library, like a class level library. Okay, what we will do, every person will dedicate one or two books. Okay, so one or two books they will dedicate. So we may not end up with all student with the sufficient textbooks. So what we have to do, I will go first and I will reserve one textbook. After my tenure, one more person will come and he will reserve for the book. At a time there won't be any quarrel or competition for getting the same kind of resource. Okay, now what are the important points with respect to the processes where one is cooperating with another? So since many processes are independent, so generally what happens is, since they are independent, their resources is separate, their work is separate, etc. See, very simple. What is the work of cricket live score? It is to fetch a live score and give it to the user. And one more process work, getting IEEE paper and show it to the user. See, both are different. So like this, we have almost all activities independent in day-to-day life, whatever we are using. Even though they are independent by work, but because of resources they are utilizing, or the environment they are under execution will be common, so there should be cooperation properly. So I have explained already advantages of cooperation with each other. Okay, next, interprocess by shared memory. As I said, there is an area of memory which is shared among processes. Okay, so which process want to use a particular part of memory, it will apply a kind of what we can say lock, or it will first request. So another process has to wait, okay, till some amount of a time. Again, after some amount of a time, if earlier process releases, okay, if not, again it will request. Okay, so then what happens, even process A doesn't releases, then operating system will take care about that, make it free from process A, so that another process will can utilize and make its work complete. Okay, that's called shared memory. So what happens for message passing? Message passing means here it will passes here message passing means there will be some random not random, there are two standard operations, send, okay, and receive. One process will say for example there are two processes, both want to use a value A. So what first process will do, it will send a message to all processes that I am going to use a resource called capital A for this much amount of a time. So what other all processes will do, if they receive a message, they will wait for some time. Okay, if not, they can go for competition. Definitely competition will exist. Not all the time all processes will wait till the process who is holding make it a free. So one time amount they will wait, so two time amount they will wait, but at the end there will be a competition, and this competition is resolved by umpire called operating system. Okay, but at the first moment itself there won't be any competition. whoever will request first, he will get a resource. If he doesn't return the resource on time, then comes the question of computation. The question of computation is solved by many techniques which we are going to study in our upcoming modules. Okay, so next, here see, there are two resources called P and Q. Okay, so two processes called P and Q which they wanted to communicate. Okay, there will be one communication link like direct communication link, ring topology, mesh topology, star topology, etc. Okay, next what happens? Okay, one person will send, one person or process A will send, process P will send message to process Q that I am going to use a resource for this much amount of a time. So process Q will, if receives, it has to wait. If it not receives, then it can compete for the resource. But once it receives a message, so it has to wait for some stipulated amount of the time. Okay, so next, what type of communication link we can have? So two processes can communicate with each other. Here we have mentioned two processes P and Q are in touch with each other through communication link. What all the type of communication links we can have? Direct connection, wire to wire connection. So what are the types? They are called as shared memory, hardware bus, and network. These are the three types. How the shared memory? There will be some common memory. Here I mentioned shared memory in this diagram. This is a really existing entity which is shared by process A as well as process B. Okay, so now what happens for second type of this one, hardware bus? I hope you remember bus different types. Okay, basic input output system, data bus, address bus, etc. Through those buses also you can send a data or you can receive a data. So another mode of communication between multiple processes is this one, network, LAN, WAN, MAN, etc. Generally what happens between two processes, if there is a communication, there are some protocols which you are going to study in your embedded system called as I2C protocol. Okay, so then BIOS protocol, etc. These all will take place between two processes. Okay, so another type of communication between the two or three processes or multiple processes is logical type. Okay, here what happens, there won't be any direct hardware which is shared among processes. Here it is a logical. Okay, so maybe there is one variable called int a which is shared among two processes. Okay, there may be some resource called printf. Okay, printf means what? It is related to what? Monitor. So that's also not a monitor. Printf function may be shared by multiple processes. That time what happens? A competition for who has to print result first. So like that, monitor is a hardware. Okay, but logical means what is the cause happening to make hardware competition among the processes to acquire some hardware. So then comes what? Synchronous and asynchronous. Also we have automatic and explicit buffering. Okay, so here let's see one by one now the last two type of message passing technique in the logical part. Okay, in the direct communication, each process that wants to communicate, it must explicitly mention to which process it wanted to communicate with. See here, process Q want to communicate with process P. So what it will do? Q will send, I want to send a message to P, and what I wanted to send a message. Okay, so once a process receives a message, it will identify who has sent and what is the content. Okay, very simple way. You will send a message hi to your friend. So what he receives two things. One, content, that's a hi. Second is your number. So what he will do, he will first he will read a content, also he will check who has sent. Okay, so based upon that he will identify, or he will recall in now his brain, okay, who is this person who has sent me, what he has sent, like that. Okay, so two things are very, very important. So what do you mean by direct? Why it is called as a direct communication is, see, the message who is sending and who is receiving directly, they mention to whom we wanted to send. See, this is called personal messaging in our some of the WhatsApp group or any of the social media. So what happens? What is another indirect message? So generally we call it as a group message. So what we will do, we will put up a session is there on this particular day, this particular time, like that we will every day we will send it. So whoever are interested, they will consider and they will join the session. Whoever are not interested or not possible, they will simply neglect. Okay, so here what happened, direct means I am sending a message or notes or some important questions to a person, whereas indirect means there will be some common platform and I will put up a data on that. Whoever are interested, they will collect it. Whoever are not interested, they will put it back. See, one more situation, I have explained something. So some student has got a doubt. So what they will do, that person will do, he has a two option. Either ask the doubt personally or put your doubt in the common platform. So what generally we can expect, the student forwarding me the doubt personally. Even though message sent is in a common, the reverse message or return message or doubts will be a direct method, whereas sending a notes is a indirect method. Okay, so now what happens in a direct, there should be a link establishment. Without a link we cannot send a data from single person to another single person. Here between two person, in the process wise between two processes. Okay, so there will between two processes there exists exactly only one link. Okay, only one link, and it will be unidirectional, sometimes bidirectional. See, what do you mean by unidirectional and bidirectional means? See, what happens is, if I am only the admin and I set it to only admin can send a message, what happens, only my side messages will be there, student cannot send a data or any doubts. So generally what happens, we will keep it in a bidirectional. So even I can also send a message. If student wanted to put the doubt in the common platform, he or she can also put it. So it can be either directional, unidirectional or bidirectional. So now I mentioned indirect communication. So what do you mean by indirect communication? Simple way, it's a group messaging. So there will be some common which is called as a mailbox. Okay, so mailbox means what? It's a kind of common server. Okay, I will put up notes or assignment or some important questions in the mailbox. So whoever is interested, they will go and check the mailbox. If they feel it is important for them, they will take a copy. If not, they will check and they may simply neglect. Okay, so what happens here, the link established is not between two processes, instead it is a common mailbox. One side process, another side common mailbox. Okay, and also in this group again it can be either unidirectional or bidirectional. So each pair of a process shares several communication links. As I mentioned, you can send a message to me or you can send a message to one more person also. Thereby you can have a data exchange in the same group also. Okay, like that. Indirect means through WhatsApp group message sharing or data sharing, whereas direct means from one person to another person. Okay, coming for the next, the point is synchronization. This is very important. So what happens, what do you mean by synchronization? Two or more processes executing at a same time or started at the same time or terminating at the same time should know about each other. Okay, so what happens if not with respect to create or terminate, at least with respect to execution. See, what happens is, you and your friend, there are two textbooks. One textbook is for subject 1, another textbook is for subject 2. So I will go for library and I will take subject 1 textbook. My friend will come and he will take a subject 2 textbook. So if you both take at a time, what we can expect, because we went to library same time, what we can expect is exactly after 15 days I will submit textbook 1 and he will submit a textbook to 2. So what happens in that situation is, we can exchange exactly on the same day. If we don't have synchronization, that means what, today I will take, okay, so after 3 days my friend will take a second textbook. So when I will return on my last date, when he will return on his last date, so between the submission there are 3 days of gap. What is the problem of that gap is, so between those 3 days, the first who I have submitted the textbook, that can be borrowed by some other third person. So what happens, we both were friends and we wanted to study both the same textbooks, two subjects textbooks together. because there was a no synchronization when we requested a textbook, even no synchronization during a termination. So between there was a no synchronization, we lost a textbook. We cannot assure that after my submission, where there are 3 days of gap, nobody will come and request for that textbook. They may come and take the textbook. So what is going to happen is, I have lost a textbook. Okay, the second person, when he come for returning the textbook, he will request the first textbook which is not available, so he has to give it back, and he has not informed when he has to go back. So again I lost first and second, even my friend also lost both the textbook. So that what is problem is, if resource is sharing, then there should be a proper synchronization. If not, so even though it is a common resource, both process may lose the resources. Okay, so next is, how many types of synchronization are there? Blocking send and blocking receive. So sender will block until the message is received. See, very simple way. I will send a message to my friend, okay, on a paper, some paper, that this is my ATM password and you can use and take the money. So what I have to do that time, I wanted to send it to that exact my person. So I will write it on my paper and I will enclose with one paste or gum, then I will give it to. So what is the condition is, I may send via third person, but who is allowed to open is only the person exact my friend. That is called as blocked send. Blocked receive means what? Receiver is blocked until a message is available. So my friend, what he will do, he will block all his friends until he receives message from me only. So that is called as blocking send and blocking receive. So what is the advantage of blocking send and blocking receive, and when we should use is, when I want to send a message particularly for particular person. Okay, what I will do, I will send one file to one of the student. Okay, and the document is password protected. So what I will do, I will send it to one student. Okay, until I give password, he cannot open. Only I know the password, and if he know the password, even if it is circulated among any student, okay, among many students, they cannot open, because it's a password protected, and only I know the password and that particular student know the password. Only we both can open it. Okay, so what you mean by blocking receive? Until he receives, that student receives, nobody can open it. Okay, nobody can open, because only he know the password to collect. Once he receives that file, he will apply the password and he can open it. What do you mean by non-blocking open and non-blocking receive is, open question paper or open textbook, open slides we are sending. So whoever I am sending, if I am the sending to one particular person, okay, it is not password protected, it's a open. Okay, whoever is carrying from one place to another place, they can also read, they can also go through with the contents, and finally it reaches the student whom I wanted to send. So he wanted to write answers for, and he has wrote answer, he wanted to submit me back. So what he will do, he cannot come to the college, so he will give it to his friend. The friend will open whatever he has wrote, he will check, then he may try to copy the things, and then finally he will also write in his book and submit. So during this data transfer, there is no restriction that it should be closed, it should be confidential, it's an open type. Okay, so which type of messages can be non-blocking? Null messages and common messages or valid messages. Which type should be blocked messages? Blocking messages means passwords or confidential messages should be sent in the blocking mode. Okay, so next one is, what do you mean by buffering? So buffering meaning is, okay, whenever the communication is either, it may be a direct or indirect, messages may be communicated through direct queues or any of the waiting queues, but basically the queues should be buffer type. So what do you mean by buffer? Buffer is a storage entity or storage devices or components which will store the data in terms of voltages. Okay, I hope you all remember the circuit, two continuously connected inverters, so or NOT gates. Okay, so what happens whenever we give a NOT gate, first two continuously connected NOT gates. Okay, so I will try to draw once. Let's see whether it is possible. Okay, here I took the inverter diagram. Okay, so let me explain something here which acts as a buffer. Say what happens here, A input. So what is the output after this inverter is A bar. Okay, so if A bar is the input for second inverter, what will be the output? A double bar. So what is equivalent value of A double bar is A. So what we have given A, what we got is A double bar. So buffer means what? It's a continuous arrangement of even numbered NOT gates. That's a basic idea. Okay, so here, okay, so buffering is also kind of two or some number of connected inverters. Okay, so what they will do, they will collect the information and they will reproduce the same information with little late or late time. So advantage of using such circuits, which we call it as a buffer, is store the data, get the data after some amount of a time. Okay, how many types of buffers are there? There are three types of buffers. One is zero capacity buffer. It will never stores any of the message. It is just like open pipe, collect the data and simply forward it. Okay, that's called zero capacity. So bounded capacity buffer. So what do you mean by bounded capacity buffer? It is going to store information for some limited amount until it becomes full. It will stores the information. Okay, there will be some predefined capacity. Say for example 10 bits or 1 KB of buffer, 2 KB of buffer. So they can store only up to that quantity of data. Beyond that they cannot store the data. So nowadays what happens? Unbounded capacity. There is no limit for total storing of the capacity of the data. So they can store any. So now the question, why we need buffers when it is a concept of inter-process communication? Okay, now there are two processes, assume process 1 and process 2. So process 1 wanted to send a message called JCET Hubli. Okay, so what it will do, process 1 will do process P2 comma JCET Hubli. Okay, so now another process, what it will do, it has received from whom? Process 1. What it has received? JCET Hubli. Okay, now assume this case. So while sending from here to here, okay, so from here to here, so assume that some dot during this transmission data loss happened and we lost this much data. Okay, now what receiver can do, it will check. Okay, I hope you all know CRC, check redundance cycle. Through this algorithm it identified I have lost some data. So what it will do, it will resend one request that give me back the message. Okay, so what is the message it has to give back? Resend. Okay, now what the process 1 here is a process 1. It's a process 1 environment and here is process 2 environment. Okay, so what process 1 has to do, it has to resend the data because it has requested. So what is the data it should send? Resend. So data is JCET Hubli. Okay, so now it will take this data and it will copy and send it to the another process, that is process 2. So now the question, where is the concept of buffering here? See, if it doesn't have buffer, who? Process 1. So what happens is after it's sending, it will delete it. Okay, if it delete after sending and P2 requested for resending, what it has to take a reference to get back the data whatever he wanted to resend. So because he has lost data, again he cannot reproduce it. So that is a mistake. So even though he has requested for resend, no data copy has received, no copy of received. Okay, so what is the problem with this? It's always leads to data loss and less efficiency of the network. So to avoid this, what we have is, whenever we are sending one message from one process to another process, process who is sending should keep one copy. So this copy, storing this copy is nothing but done in buffers. Okay, I hope it is clear now what's the importance of buffer. So now this capacity, no capacity is called a zero capacity buffer. Limited is called as a bounded capacity buffer. If it can store a lot of data, it's called as unbounded capacity buffer. Hope it is clear now. So that finishes our chapter 3 and also the module 1. I am going to share the module 1 notes soon, also the questions of the module 1. Okay, so what I request every student is to go through with the content of all the slides or all the discussions, notes also, and finish off writing your assignment. Okay, so thank you.